Well, Bob Allen, welcome.
Thanks, David.
This is all about Sydney Harbour Tunnel and Transfield's involvement. And I remember when I first got involved, you were all already well and truly there. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got to be involved with the tunnel?
Well, I'd left the Australian Navy submarine service in '88, and I started work at the monorail. Well, without being facetious, the monorail was going around in circles and going nowhere.
As a Sydney monorail?
Yeah. And then the Sydney Harbour Tunnel started to look appealing. It was due to open in August '92, and early '92 I was going, I'm a bit bored where I am, where can I go, what can I do? And the tunnel was something new and novel that was coming into Sydney. So I thought, well, coming to Australia, let alone Sydney, because it's the first major road tunnel and subsea tunnel in Australia. So I thought I'd give it a go. And fortunately I got a Guernsey and I come over in May '92.
Now, you came to Australia in '88?
I came to Australia in '82.
'82?
Yeah.
And before that, you were a submariner in the Merchant Navy, weren't you?
I was a submariner in the Royal Navy.
The Royal Navy?
And I served on nuclear and diesel submarines. And I served in diesel submarines in Australia. Australia was very nice to me. They flew myself and my wife and kids out to Australia, business class Qantas, thanks very much. I could handle that. Spent 2 or 3 months at Watson wondering what the hell's going to happen, and then into the submarine service. And from there into this career, which underwater too, so there must be something in it.
Well, that's why I thought it was an interesting sort of history from submariner to the tunnel under the harbour, because it's not really under the harbour, is it?
It's across it. You're right. It's in a trench across the harbour. Yeah.
Did you follow the controversies about the construction and development of it much? Or?
Not so much at the time, because I lived well west of Sydney. I lived out to a place called Cranbrook, which is 60 or 70 kilometres west of Sydney. So as a lifestyle, it was never going to affect me. But once you start looking into it and you read about certain things that are going on and certain politicians, local MP Ted Mack and others who are really vocal anti the tunnel, you go, well, what's it all about? What's the problem? And obviously history has proved all these naysayers wrong. It's been a hugely successful project for both the public, for Transfield and for the government. I think it's been a brilliant job.
Yeah. And when you joined, what was your job?
I was a tunnel controller, and I was actually the opening tunnel controller at 3 o'clock in the morning, 31st of August 1992. And in the office, it might seem a bit trite, but among all the memorabilia that's on there is a postcard I sent to my mother after it was opened, and it's date stamped the 2nd of August, saying, "Mum, all went well, good job, thanks very much," that sort of stuff. And
I think one of the newspapers had the headline the next morning or the day after it opened, "It's perfect."
It did, and I don't think there's been another one since.
And after all the controversy, to have some Sydney newspaper come out and say it's perfect, and you were the man that was controlling. What's a tunnel? What is there to control about a tunnel? I mean, a tunnel's just a bloody tunnel, isn't it? I mean, you go in one end, you come out the other end. What is there to control?
And that's a great perception for the public. As long as it's stress and worry-free and I just go through and don't think about it, that's a great, not facade, but that's a great thing for the public to perceive. But behind that, the tunnel is insured now for $1.7 billion. The technology, the computers...
$1.7 billion.
Billion.
1,700 million.
Yeah. It's the control systems, the computer systems, the ventilation systems, the construction, the outstations, the amount of effort that went into building this well and correctly in the first place has meant we've had a pretty trouble-free life. We've had incidents where we've all cocked up occasionally, and sometimes it's been us that have cocked up, sometimes it's motorists that cock up, Sometimes it's people do stupid things under the harbour, because there's an old saying, you can do it deeper under the harbour, and some people have proved it because they've done it deeper underneath. I even had a lady take a horse out of a horse box and walk it around a car underneath the harbour. So,
say that again.
But a lady stopped in.
She had a horse.
A horse box, towing a horse box, stopped under the harbour in the middle of the tunnel, took her horse out, walked it around her car and the horse box, put it back in the trailer, and then drove out the tunnel.
What, it had to have a shit or something? Or what?
I don't know whether this is a nervous horse and who knows, but didn't leave any lucky horseshoes. It just drove out. We've had all sorts.
And we never got to ask her why.
No.
Yeah.
And these were before the days of digital recording, so everything was recorded. So this is just in Bob Allen's head when he was sitting in the control room, and you just file it away.
Well, what are some of the things that can go wrong? That you know, as you say, it all just seems to be automatic. But what sort of things can go wrong?
There's when the motorists get it wrong. Motorists get it wrong occasionally. Sometimes just not paying attention, minor rear enders. Other times you get a single vehicle rollover in a tunnel, and you're just trying to say to yourself, how can you as a driver of a car manage to hit a wall when there's nobody else in a tunnel, roll up and end up on your roof when you're the only car there? It's quite amazing that some of these people have licences, but they screw it up for the rest of the world.
So what's the tunnel controller got to do? How does the tunnel controller know that there's been a crash in the tunnel?
Well, we've got cameras every 60 metres, and this is some of the upgrades and improvements we made over the years. When we first opened, some cameras were over 200 metres apart. It made it very difficult for a controller to see exactly what was going on. So with improvements to computers and cameras, we've now got cameras every 60 metres through the tunnel. So the guys can see exactly what's happened.
So what they're sitting looking at a bunch of screens.
Yeah, they got a whole bank of videos. So they can watch the traffic sequentially go through the tunnel as it goes from camera to camera. And then after an incident, there's a recording system. They can go back and see what caused it. So we've had incidences of accidents where the driver said, it's not my fault, this happened, that happened. We've given a recording to the police, and all of a sudden the driver's gone, yeah, I screwed up.
Yeah. So what does, so you were sitting there as a controller sometimes, and you'd see an accident in the tunnel?
Yeah.
So what did you have to do then? What's that put in train?
You've got to get a traffic plan in to advise other motorists, try and get them to divert to the bridge before they get to the tunnel to ease the load on yourself. If it's a single lane breakdown, it's reasonably straightforward. You just get the traffic to go past.
How do we fix the accident?
Well, the RMS, or the RJ at the time, were our recovery team. So we call them up and they send in a recovery crew. Once we get those vehicles out, as long as there's no injuries, it's pretty straightforward. We've been very fortunate. Is it fortunate, luck, design, all of the above? In nearly 23 years of operations, we've had no fatalities inside the tunnel. We've had one at the toll plaza, but inside the tunnel it's been an extremely safe operation.
And of course when it opened, people had to stop and pay tolls. Now they drive straight through, don't they? Yeah,
it's quite a major effort on a lot of people there. We used to have 3 lanes diverging to 6 and then merging into 2, so every merge was a potential for an accident. But the other advantage of that at the time was the management of trucks, particularly overheight trucks and trucks carrying dangerous goods, because everybody had to stop. We had direct management of those vehicles. But once we went 100% electronic, we had to redesign it, give additional diversion points for trucks, and give ourselves the ability to stop traffic when we needed to because of overheight or dangerous goods.
But surely no overheight truck would try and drive into the tunnel. You're not telling me that truck drivers, knowing their truck won't fit, actually try to go into the tunnel?
I have to say yes. But the other side of that answer is, I don't know if they know it doesn't fit. They're ignorant to the size of their truck. It's a problem that we've probably spent close to $1 million trying to fix over the years.
Well, what happens? They get stuck? How do you handle that?
some have been stuck, some literally have ripped the roof off the top of their truck. And then obviously we've got to stop the traffic, we've got to reverse the traffic away from the entrance of the tunnel. They've got to get out onto the bridge, so the bridge becomes twice as busy as it was before. People miss flights, they miss hospital appointments. We've got to disentangle the track, we've got to get them out, we've got to repair the damage, and then we've got to try and get on with our life in as short a time as possible. And for us, it's not meant to sound trite, but for us, this is our job. We're not there to clean up after errant truck drivers, but it's our job to manage the tunnel. The people who suffer are the poor sods who are trying to get across the harbour.
Well, surely there must be ways of stopping or this from happening. What sort of have any steps been taken to address this problem? Because it's a nightmare when the traffic gets screwed up like that.
Well, over the years, as I said, we spent close to $1 million, and we had the only water curtain in the world which has got a giant stop sign on it, which was effective for quite a while and stopped some of them actually impacting the tunnel.
Well, what do you mean by a water curtain?
What we do is we drop a sheet of water at the tunnel portal and we project a stop sign onto it. So as the truck approaches the tunnel, if he's not making an effort to stop, we deploy this in less than 3 seconds, and people stop.
And you said that was effective at the beginning. Is that not effective now?
What we've done over recent years, because this was right at the tunnel portal, is a long way to reverse back. We managed to convince the government, the New South Wales government, to install red light cameras at our old toll plaza. So we stop the trucks further away from the tunnel and make it easier to divert. So the water screen's still in place. It's only been used once or twice.
I've heard about that, and if they go through the red light cameras, there's enough red light cameras that in one hit they might lose their licence.
Right. Yeah.
So
2 red light cameras before they hit the tunnel portal.
So hopefully they're aware of that. Is the incidence of that reduced as a result of this?
Hugely. Also, the government eventually they took some notice and they've increased the fines and penalties on the truck drivers. So it's had a major improvement. But the red light cameras were the biggest one, which was a tunnel initiative, and the tunnel paid for it. We had to convince the government to install them, and eventually they did.
Now I'm asking you a lot of things about this, but as a tunnel controller, but you're now the general manager. What was your progression from tunnel controller and to your current job? In
May '92, I started as a tunnel controller, and August '93, I was fortunate enough. Bill Fleming was a general manager when I started. Sandy Hone was the original general manager. I'm not sure how smoothly things were going, but anyway, he moved on and Bill Fleming took over as general manager.
And Bill Fleming was a Transfield man?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Rob Butterworth was the operations manager.
Right.
Well, Bill was a construction guy and a mover and a shaker, so none of us anticipated him being the general manager for a long period. And Rob moved up to general manager in '93, and I was invited to take the position of operations manager.
Right.
In '99, just after the Mont Blanc tunnel fire, I hope that was an auspicious sign, Rob moved on and I was asked by the operations committee if I'd accept the position as general manager. So I've had an interesting and good background inside the tunnel, and really appreciate the efforts.
Now the operations committee, what sort of committee is that? How does that work?
Well, the committee's formed with, originally we were owned by 2 companies, which is Kumagai Gumi and Transfield. In '97, Transfield split into 2 companies. So it went from having, without sounding rude, a relatively comfortable board of two members and 2 committee members, and make it work to having...
The operations committee works like a board, does it?
Yes, yeah. So, and that went from, it has to agree, everything has to be 100%. It went from Transfield and Kumagai saying, okay, we're comfortable, to having 3 bosses, and you've got to keep 3 bosses happy. So it's an interesting dynamic at times with 3 different entities.
And everything at this board or operations committee, it's got to be unanimous?
Every decision's unanimous to make the tunnel work.
If one of the representatives disagrees with something, what happens?
Well, we're quite fortunate that we're all mature guys, we're all quite upfront, and we're able to nut it out and get ourselves on track and sort it out. We've never had a position where we've stalled the company or been in a position where we're not allowed to progress, because we're able to nut it out in the room and get things fixed.
So this is 22 years of decision making. It has to be unanimous from what is now 3 different companies and management, and it's always been able to get a unanimous decision.
Every time.
I don't think a lot of people would believe that.
Well, it has its moments, but we've made it. And that goes to the credit of yourself, of course, David, and other members of the Operations Committee who are always willing to listen and take the other view, but argue the corner when it needs to be done. And that's what happens.
And over those years, there would have been a few different personalities, one imagines.
Oh, there has been.
Can you remember the Transfield guys that were there? What's your earliest memory of what might be called the Transfield culture or the Transfield style?
I suppose in my early days as operations manager, I didn't have a lot of dealings with the Operations Committee. So I suppose when I first met you guys, I'm going from a leap of working in control rooms, working with the staff, organising things, to suddenly having to deal with the higher echelons of the company. So my first effort was to keep the pucker factor going and get on with my job. But once I met you and had a couple of meetings and had some time and understood where we were and where you were, I found it great.
So who was the Transfield person on that Operations Committee when you first encountered them?
Oh, you're really stretching the memory now. Was Alan Patterson? I don't know if that really been.
Yeah. Alan, yeah.
And there was Richard, I can't remember his surname.
Richard Smith, I think.
Richard Smith,
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
So there was a few names, and of course there's 2 names, one from Kumagai. God, I'm having a memory fade now, he's still with us. Nigel Barra. Yeah. And of course John Favaloro from Albia, really originally Tenex. The history on the committee is very, very long.
It is just extraordinary to me that you can have, Transfield's got a very particular culture, and you've got Kumagai Gumi that have, I think, always had a Japanese person,
yes,
or people,
yep,
on the Operations Committee, and still the decisions are unanimous.
Yep,
and everyone agrees. It's an extraordinary example.
And Kumagai's rep on the committee is a director, which gives him not necessarily a step above, but he's able to make those decisions directly, whereas the other committee members have to go to their directors. But it still worked really well.
So what about what are the financial decisions like? Tell us a bit about, what are the issues with sort of financing the tunnel? It's got a lot of debt. It's got a lot of maintenance. How's all that managed?
Well, I think in the early days, obviously the early days are set-up days, the fact that a maintenance sinking fund was considered and implemented has had huge benefits for the Sydney Harbour Tunnel and the public, for all of us. And the owners, a percentage of the tolls goes into a fund called the Maintenance Sinking Fund. Now, that money can only be spent on improvements to the tunnel. And I can only spend that if the RMS also agree. So it's countersigned by the RMS before it's spent. That enables us to keep this tunnel as modern as it is.
And if it wasn't spent, who would get the money?
Any residual funds at the end of the concession goes to the government. So there's no benefit for either one of us not to spend it. And I don't mean to say we'd be frivolous with it. What I mean to say is we're able to keep the tunnel modern, and we have kept the tunnel modern. When we give this tunnel back in 2022, which is only 7 and a bit years away, we'll be given back a tunnel that's still fit for purpose for another 70 years at least, and it will have modern control systems, modern operating systems, modern fixtures and fittings. We're not going to be passing back a 30-year-old tunnel.
So there's never any discussion about, look, the shareholders would like a bigger dividend this year, surely you could cut back on the maintenance just for a year so that we could have a bigger dividend in these hard times. That
never happened.
It doesn't happen because the money that's there for maintenance can't be released for anything but maintenance.
But it's got to be for the benefit of the tunnel.
Do you know of any other infrastructure that works like that?
No, I know a few would love it, but they haven't got it. And I think it's been fantastic. The operations committee and the directors are involved. I mean, the money's not mine to spend, as Bob Allen feels like. I still have to justify the spend and put it forward. And some of the spend is big. The computer systems that we're replacing over the next few years to make sure the tunnel's fit for purpose for the next 70 will be almost military in its design and its security. It's going to be about $7 million by the time we finish, but it will mean the public get a tunnel that's really fit for purpose and modern. But besides that, there was a $222.6 million interest-free loan given to the company during the construction period. Has to be repaid at the end of the concession. That money, if you net present value it, that money is available now. There was 486 million raised in bonds. That'll be repaid. There's absolutely no risk to any of the debt. And when we look at the finances, the Westpac model, which forecasts the amount of money that the government may have to put into this project, it's over $700 billion in front, the government. It's not something they're going to boast about. They'll probably have to tell somebody what they've done with that 700 million because they haven't given it to us. And the companies, Transfield, they've made a modest profit, a bit more than was anticipated during the operations, but it pours into insignificance compared with the savings that we as taxpayers have had.
Yeah, you compare this with a lot of recent infrastructure projects that get into the headlines for going broke and being in receivership, or you got the M5 East Tunnel, which is full of smoke a lot of the time and clearly not maintained properly. How come that the Sydney Harbour Tunnel works so well and has sorted out these things, and people haven't just learned from that and do it with other pieces of infrastructure? What is it?
I think the big thing for me, or my opinion, for what it counts, is when Transfield wanted to put this project together, it was a jewel in the crown. We're going to build a tunnel that is going to be a good tunnel. We're not going to build it to the cheapest price we're going to do. We're going to build it to a standard. We're not going to build one that's going to be fit for purpose for 100 years and it's going to work.
Yeah, it wasn't a competitive tender, was it?
It wasn't.
It was a negotiated deal with the government.
Yeah, it was a bid put to the government, and the government said, guys, go and do a feasibility study, come back and see us. This was in '86. If we like it, we'll go ahead with it. So by the time all the environmental assessments were made, a feasibility study was done, government agreed, and for those who remember, the bridge on the toll on the bridge went from 20 cents to $1 during construction, and that is where the 222.6 million came from. And then on opening it went to $2. But the ventilation system, the design of the tunnel, there was no resumption of people's houses, no resumption of land. The north pylon of the Sydney Harbour Bridge was used for the ventilation exhaust. And at Bradfield Park, there were some modifications there for air intakes. So we're getting clean, fresh air off the harbour. The exhaust is going 90 metres above sea level and being dispersed well and clearly away from the harbour. It's been a really well done project, and it's an old line, but I'll use it. It's been a bit of an invisible landmark. People come down, they approach the city, they disappear under the harbour, they come up the other side, they finish their trip, don't even think about it. And for all the naysayers again at the time, try and imagine getting across the harbour without the Sydney Harbour Tunnel today. Occasionally we have accidents. We've had one or two, which I say, well, we've cocked up, where we've caused a lot of congestion. it's hard to imagine what it would be like every day if you still had to get, say, 300,000 vehicles across the harbour on the bridge. Don't think it would work.
So, Transfield, you know, we've got rep on the operations committee and directors and stuff, but your impression of Transfield over the years, how would you sum that up?
I think that their guidance for me and the culture has been fantastic. For someone to come from my level, which is as an operator, and then to be exposed to Transfield, their culture, the way they've enabled me to look after the tunnel. They haven't, let's say, don't kick ass. If you screw it up, they let you know. But there's guidance there if you need it, and I found that really useful over the years. And not only that, I call myself an uneducated job. I left school at 15, joined the Navy, and I've been invited to the Australia Chamber Orchestra recitals. I've seen some of the art. I've been exposed to things that I wouldn't have been exposed to before, because of the generosity of Transfield, and their culture is just not come to work and get on with it. Let's see who you are and what you're doing.
What's your biggest focus now with been a long time in the job? It's handed back to the government in, I think you said, in 7.5 years.
Yep.
I've got my own views about whether it actually ever, the government will ever want it back, but who knows. But what's your current focus? It sounds like it runs like clockwork. You're just sitting back, sort of taking time out for golf, or what's the?
I'm not really into sport or golf, David, but the big focus really is 2022 now. Because the structure itself, I mean, it's huge concrete and steel structure. The electrical, mechanical stuff we can replace, repair, move in and out as we need to, and the funds are there. We've budgeted for that. Believe it or not, till 2022. But the actual immersed tubes themselves, which are 8 units, 20,000 tonnes each, reinforced concrete. Concrete cracks, we've got to make sure that those units are okay. And so our focus is now and will be till the end to ensure that we can demonstrate the tunnel's fit for purpose for the next 70 years.
So how do you go about doing that?
Well, we've engaged a company called Harbour and 2 Danish companies, believe it or not, because we don't have the expertise in Australia. There's lots of people building tunnels, but nobody's got the life cycle of maintenance that perhaps the Danes do with their immersed tubes, and whether they do. So they're helping us with Iverach to assess
the Danes have got a lot of tunnels similar to Sydney Harbour tunnels.
They've got immersed tubes. They've got some huge tunnels, and because they've been maintaining reinforced concrete structures, not just tunnels but also rigs and other subsea structures, they understand the environment that we operate in. And
they've had a look at it?
Yeah, they've come in. Both Cowie and Rambo have been in. Obviously they come in the middle of the night, but they fly in whenever they fly in. But they can only get into the tunnel in the middle of the night. They come down and they crawl around it, have a look. And so far it's all thumbs up. We're not expecting any nasty surprises. We're just going to make sure we stay on top of it. We invite the RMS to the inspections. We show them the reports. We just want to get to the end of the concession and go, here's the keys. There's the tunnel. It's been nice knowing you. 35 years. I'm off. And hopefully we can make that as smooth as possible. In the meantime, like everybody in business, sometimes the hardest work is just working with some of your own staff and people, negotiating enterprise agreements, other bits and pieces. Life goes on, people have conflicts. We all love the tunnel because it all keeps us going.
How many, what's the staff numbers?
32.
32 people.
Yeah.
And this is 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
Yep, every day of the year.
How the controllers that sit and stare at screens, I mean, most of the time nothing's going wrong. How do they not fall asleep or get bored, or are they just one at a time doing it? Or what's the?
Well, they're both there, and our attitude to the control room
but
is.
You have two at the.
There's two. There's a controller and an assistant. Both trained to the same level. One takes full responsibility. And it's interesting to watch because I've done it myself too, that And we say, look, one of you can just relax and look away or do what you want to do or read for a bit, because otherwise it would drive you potty. But one of you's got to be doing it all the time. But the other part is it's almost subliminal, because the movement through the tunnel, which is going north and south, is constant. And if it stops or something else is different, or a light colour changes or something moves, indicators come on cars because they've got to go around an obstruction.
You got alarms?
Yeah, there's alarms warning people if the CO gets too high in the tunnel. But because of the flow and the information, which is stable because we've been doing it for so long, everything out of the norm becomes like that, and they can see it quite quickly. And I haven't been in the control room for a long time for a long shift. I mean, I've done the occasional one now, but hopefully if I'm in there, we've got serious problems. But it does, and you watch the guys. If you stand and watch them and you go and talk to them, I'm in there 2 or 3 times a day. Sometimes they'll pick something up and you go, shit, how did they get that? But it's purely and simply because they're attuned to everything that's going on in that room. I'm a dinosaur in some of my attitudes. A lot more modern tunnels have more alarms and more systems that tell people things are wrong. My opinion on that is, if you're going to let people sit back and do nothing because the system will tell you you've got something wrong, then you start to ignore the system and you wait for the system to tell you you've got a problem before you fix it. My opinion is you should be conscious of what condition your tunnel is before it tells you it's got a problem. And that's the way I prefer to work. And
how do you train these people? What sort of qualifications does a tunnel controller need?
In the early days when I started, we were nearly all ex-military. Ex-Army, ex-Air Force, only one ex-Air Force, most ex-Navy. The operations manager started the same time as me, is also an ex-Mariner. But I think submarines had nothing to do with it. It was more the fact that they needed people who had some discipline, who were happy to adapt, weren't stuck in routines from previous jobs and happy to move around and do what happened. So over the years, there's less and less military people in it. Although I get accused occasionally of having a military style. I am what I am, but it works. And when I say military, it's not humming and hawing and jumping up and down. It's just I like things to be process driven might be the wrong word, but there's a reason to do what we do. Everyone who works in the control room has been part of that process and understands why we do it that way.
Have they got any qualifications? Or
they do now. There was never a qualification for a tunnel controller, and I don't think there was around the world either. So for many years I was looking for a way to recognise the work done in the control room. And at an unrelated conference many years ago, I met a lady called Cynthia de Grosso. And I said to her, well, what do you do? And she said, well, I work for the Logistics Skills Council of Australia. What does that entail? Well, she said, well, people, if they need a qualification, we make them. I said, I need to talk to you. So this is what I need to do. This is what I do for a living. I manage the Sydney Harbour Tunnel. I've got this control room where these guys are responsible for a $1.7 billion tunnel. They're responsible for the economic use of electricity, the people's lives, fire and life safety systems. Yet there's not one qualification available for them to recognise the skill set. We can do that for you. So she put me in contact with a guy by the name of John Gilbert, who's also happened to be ex-military, he's ex-army. And we met, we hit it off. I think most ex-military people do. This is where I want to go, John. It took us 6 years, but I believe we got a world first in the road traffic operators qualification tunnel, and that guys now have a certificate 4 in road tunnel operations.
A Cert 4?
Yeah.
Yeah. What about earthquakes? We don't have them in Sydney, but we thought we didn't have one in Newcastle, and they had what would happen in an earthquake?
Again, we've studied that more recently because the tunnel was designed for earthquakes we expect in our lifetime in our area. An earthquake put the mockers on that one in Newcastle, upset that answer. So we have looked at it. We've studied to see what liquefaction will do to the tunnel. Would it force it to lift? And some major earthquakes, if we got one big enough in the area, could cause us some serious problems. So what we've done is we've tried to determine at what level we've got to shut the tunnel and get in and get the engineers down there. So we've just have a minor tremor a while away, a distance away. We know the damage that's likely to have caused the tunnel was minimal. We'd have a rough idea what the engineers have got to look for. But as we get closer and closer to the tunnel and we get bigger and bigger earthquakes, then we start to understand what damage could be done to the tunnel. So we've looked at that. We don't know when the earthquake's going to hit. We just know what we've got to do afterwards.
Right. But the tunnel would survive pretty much?
Yes.
Wouldn't fill up with water?
So each of the tubes are joined by rubber gaskets, believe it or not, called Gina gaskets and Omega gaskets. And there's 8 tubes, 120 metres long, all joined, which butt up to a steel face like this with a Gina gasket, which is that shape, which is under quite a bit of pressure. But it's got enough flexibility to another units to move.
Okay, yeah.
So it's not built with really rigid joints between each one.
Yeah. And if there's sea level rise, like some people predict, will that change anything?
Well, both road entrances are well above any predicted sea level rise, so we're not anticipating that to cause us any problems.
How long do you reckon it'll last?
It'll do at least its 100 years, and I'd be surprised if it didn't get another 50. When we pass it back over to the new owners, we're putting together not just here's the tunnel, take it back. We want to put together a maintenance manual, and if that manual is followed, then there's no reason why they won't get 100 years or more, because we're putting the steps forward so it doesn't deteriorate and fall apart around their ears.
Yeah, Bob, tell us something about the overall importance of the tunnel, the statistics, how many cars, revenues, etc. You're familiar with all those things, and it's a private company, so they don't get published very much.
Well, it's a private company, and also what's different from every other toll road is we don't rely on the tolls. We've got a fixed income until 2022 when we hand the tunnel back. So the design and construct of the tunnel, the owners had to make their profit during the construction period, which they did.
Well, who gets the tolls?
The government. So the owners put up $40 million of their own money to ensure the project was going to be completed on time and on budget, and they weren't going to get it back unless they did. And the government took the traffic flow risk, and that created, which is why the government collect the tolls at the tunnel and the bridge, and they pay us a fee to operate and maintain the tunnel. Now that's where the government have made huge savings over the years because of the investments, etc., that have been put together. And that was agreed in the early days where the money could go. The government's $700 million ahead because there's much less they've had to put into the project. But with the toll collection, in the early days of traffic, the early days, when we first opened, for instance, our average daily traffic was about 65,000 vehicles a day. Now here we are 23 years later, and that's close to 100,000 vehicles a day. Now, the expansion of city, the commerce, the trade, the appointments, getting where people needed to be, could never have done it on the bridge. Would never have happened.
Do you remember what they forecast when it was planned?
I think the traffic figures are reasonably close to the forecast. I think there were some very good figures done. So unfortunately for modern tunnels, and I'm going to digress a bit, they seem to want to put work out how much it's going to cost and then backward engineer the traffic figures to meet the budget figures. Well, that was never the case for the Sydney Harbour Tunnel. There was a huge history for the bridge for what traffic was doing and where the peaks and the troughs were, and where the planning was going to go. The Gore Hill Freeway had to be built, the Eastern Distributor had to be built. They knew that traffic was going to increase and they needed this link. And the overall traffic figures, I mean, for instance, the Sydney Harbour Tunnel takes anything between 30 and 60% more traffic. But overall, across the harbour, the traffic is probably only up by, say, 8 to 10% and sometimes a bit less. So being within 10% of predictions from 30 years ago, I think it's pretty close and it's a good effort. So financially for all of us, it's worked. And not, when you just look at cold, hard facts, the financial side of it, it's just dollars and cents. It's easy to say, yeah, we've saved that much money or we've created this. But if you take the unforeseen benefits or the benefits that people don't put the cost on because we forget about it, if you just took 10 minutes of every motorist day that they're not queued up in that traffic because they can get across the harbour, you take the fuel costs, the time costs, the damage to the environment costs, and try and put a price on that. We would have recouped our income and recovered that money for the construction of the tunnel many times over in the lifetime of our tunnel, in those other savings that have been achieved by the community.
People just take that for granted now, don't they?
Yeah.
Mm.
Just don't realise.
Until something goes wrong and they're reminded.
That's right, and they're short of petrol or they've run out of this and run out of that. I mean, that's another point. In the first year we opened, we'd have over 2,000 incidences of breakdowns and collisions in the tunnel, minor rear enders. In a year, that's down to about 500. It's less than a quarter of what we used to be.
So there's more traffic. There's almost double the traffic and 1/4 of the incidents.
Yeah. Some of that goes to motorists and familiarity. Some of it goes to more modern cars. Some of it goes to cleaner fuel. Some of it goes to people knowing where they're going. Perhaps the routes are better, the roads are better, and we've got a better network. But some of it goes to the efficient operation of our tunnel and, you know, the bridge and others by others as well. But I pride ourselves that we're a crucial link across the harbour, and we can't afford to stuff it up.
Mm. You got some statistics there. What's some interesting facts and figures there?
Well, as I say, in 23 years. It's 23 years in August, which is only next month. Fires, which is one of the biggest scary things in the tunnel, we've had 10, but only 3 of them have actually required us to use all the safety equipment. And again, when I got offered the general manager's job, 39 people have been killed in a fire in Mont Blanc. There was that's 11.25 kilometre tunnel between France and Italy. And I hope this is not an omen. It's pretty scary. Fires in tunnels are really scary. But one of the most important things that the Sydney Harbour Tunnel did, they can't take all the credit, New South Wales Brigade has to take some, is a deluge system, which is a heavy-duty sprinkler system. And that's been used 3 times in a tunnel on real fires. And what the public don't realise too, that innovation, if you like, because it has been used in Japan before. The Mont Blanc tunnel was closed for 5 years for repairs, not even counting the horrible things that the families went through when they lost their loved ones. But the tunnel was shut for 5 years. We've had fires in the tunnel and we've been open in 2 hours. In one case, less than an hour and a half. Sometimes the media complain, well, what the bloody hell are you doing? What's going on? But the procedures, the policies, the stuff that was put in to make the tunnel work, people just don't appreciate how much effort goes into making sure not only that it works accurately when you want it to and stops when you want it to. I think it's been brilliant.
Yeah, well, I've had the privilege, as you know, of being in the tunnel at midnight when it's been closed to the public and watched the fire brigade deliberately set fire to a vehicle and rehearse everything that has to be done, and very impressive.
That was.
I understand there's not many tunnels do that.
I think we're the only one that will actually burn a vehicle. Most of them will do pan fires where they put a bit of diesel in and set fire to it. But it doesn't give you the sight, the smell, the sounds and the noise. And the operators in the control room, they see this on their cameras and they've got to operate it as if it's real. Well, we have spectators down there and our own staff, so they understand that, guys, if you don't get this right, just after 2 minutes, this is what it looks like. You've got to get it right. And it's got to be accurate, which is why we put extra cameras in, extra line markings, all this sort of work. But actually, David, the first exercise I did that with the fire brigade to do that. We've tried them before with no real fire, with flares, and it doesn't work. And I asked them many years ago, I think, can we do a fire exercise with a car? Because I want to get a bit more realism. And I said, okay, Bob, we'll do you a fire exercise. You'll get a lot of white smoke and no flame, but it will look all right. Well, it sort of went pear-shaped in that we got a huge amount of flame and a lot of black smoke, and we had a real fire. And I can remember my pucker factor going, oh shit, hang on, let's let it run. Let's just run with it. We've got the systems. It's just a small car fire. Well, let's let it work. So we let it burn, and we let the flames grow, and we let the smoke go, and we applied the systems that are supposed to be applied, and it was 100% successful. And I said to the fire brigade afterwards, can we do this a lot more often? Even though it sort of went pear-shaped compared to what we expected. So now we try to do that every 18 months or so. And people come from other tunnels. We've had people come from Holland to come and have a look at it as well, because nobody else would do it. And when you consider the tunnel was designed to take a 50 megawatt fire for 4 hours without a deluge system, if you can't trial a small fire, which is only 3 or 4 megawatts, and prove your systems, then you've got a serious, either you doubt your own quality of your build, or you doubt the quality of your operators. You should be able to do that without any issues. And as David, you witnessed it, we have the fires, we put it out, we go and have a look, tunnel's open a couple of hours later.
Well, that's been very, very interesting. A long 23-year career, no intentions of retirement. It's been terrific to have you give us all that detail and all the stories and background. So thanks very much. Been terrific, and may you have many more successful years.
Thanks, David. And I think it's a reflection on Transfield too that I've been afforded this opportunity, and I'm really happy.
Great.
Cheers.